Hey guys, DMS3TV here. Today I want to talk about something that's been awaited for quite a while on my channel, and that is Sennheiser's lineup, the HD580, 600, 650, and 6XX. Now, I've talked about the 650 for ages. I've talked about it in almost every single video where I've compared any pair of headphones to anything. It's always 650 because that's been my reference headphone for a long time. And that's what this line is designed to be, their reference class headphones. Now, what I'm going to do here is not necessarily a review, but I really kind of want to get into the differences between these different headphones and what their strengths and weaknesses are and make them what they really, why do they stand out? Why are they known so well? And why do I use it as my reference standard? So without any more of that, let's get right into it. First off is the HD580. Now, these are kind of the predecessor to the rest of the line. So 580 came before 600 and all that. They stopped producing these quite a while ago because, as you guys may know, the 600 series has been around for a very long time. So, except the 6XX is over here. This is the HD580. The final version of the HD580, which was known as the Jubilee, from what I know of, used a very similar driver to the HD600. Now, that was the final version of the 580. Before that, this was kind of the flagship of what is now the 600 series. So I'm not saying this was like their top of the line, but I'm saying this was, kind of like what the at the present time 650 was. So sound-wise, the 580, and I'll touch more on this later, but the 580 is a healthy mix of several of these headphones, actually. And if you ask me personally, as well as several other people, they would tell you that the 580 is a healthy mix of both the 600 and the 650. Now, what does that mean exactly? That means that the HD580 has more soundstage than the HD600. It's a little bit darker than the HD600 and has more response in the lows. It's got a little bit more of that Sennheiser veil on top too, but it retains some of the mid-range performance that the HD600 has. So it's not quite as wide as HD650 and not nearly as narrow as HD600. Now, with that being said, I do want to talk real quick about HD600 and what I mean by narrow. HD600 is pretty much universally known as extremely neutral. Okay, the mid-range performance in HD600 is absolutely ridiculous. That's where it gets its extreme vocal presence from. Unfortunately, a side effect of that is that there is very little soundstage. HD600 is very, very narrow, very close in your face, much more than HD650 or HD580. Now, with that being said, is that necessarily a bad thing? No, HD600 sounds absolutely phenomenal, and honestly, it's tough for me to decide which one I like more out of all of these cans. Now, I will say that on tubes, I'd much prefer the sound of HD600 because while these are extremely neutral, they have much more highs than HD600 much more highs than HD650 or HD580, but the lows are a little bit weak, and you put them on a tube amp, it kind of warms them up while still retaining those powerful mids and those powerful neutral highs, which in that area can give HD600 an advantage, which I very much like, but it's hard to get back some of that soundstage. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. In a lot of cases, these can outperform 650. Especially when you're listening to something that is very heavily based on, a central singer or something like that. If you're not as much worried about these crazy surrounding effects, and especially in acoustic music, these really, really shine. So with that being said, here is the 650. Now, I know you guys have heard me talk about HD650 a lot. These are actually worn down pretty far. I mean, these pads have worn down to almost nothing. And pads do affect the sound of Sennheisers quite a bit. Now, I have pad rolled these with some newer pads. Generally, you want to have Sennheiser brand pads, and you want to have them in pretty good condition because over time these wear down and they do get more comfortable. The clamp goes away, but because these have no clamp at all, they've been worn down so much, but you do lose a little bit of the sound. I mean, there's a little bit less impact, there's a little bit less highs, there's a little bit less everything. So that's worth noting. Now, I did try these with new pads on them just kind of to see the difference, because several of these, actually almost all these, are in like new condition. The 580s, of course, are a little bit older and their pads are a little bit worn, but I did try newer pads on them just to kind of see what they really sounded like at their full potential. Anyway, HD650. HD650 is definitely the darkest sounding out of the bunch. HD650 is a more warm dynamic headphone, and as you can see, it looks very similar to HD600. It has the same kind of grills, it has the same kind of headband. The only real difference visually on these is, of course, the HD650 badge and the actual coloring on the plastic. These don't really have that spackle. They've got more of like a gray glitter kind of look to them. But that aside, HD650 does have more soundstage, and the highs, while they are more recessed and it is a warmer can, the highs are a little bit sweeter. So while they are not necessarily as pronounced, you don't hear them nearly as much, they have a certain kind of soft tone to them that's very pleasing. It's very relaxing, and it's very easy to listen to for long periods of time. And I would say 650 is easily the least fatiguing out of all of these headphones. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, there's the 6XX. And if you don't know this already, the 6XX is the HD650. Really, that's it. The HD6XX is the mass drop version of the HD650. There are some slight differences. There's coloration. The HD6XX has 6XX on it. It's black. They have brand new pads. The cables were different. I mean, as you guys can see here, I'm using custom cables with everything. Every pair up here has custom cables. These two cables right here were made by Ursine Audio, which I will provide a link in the video description. I'm actually making a video about these cables in the near future, so make sure you check that out. The other cable right here, my balance connector, was made by VE Clan, the same people who make the Monks, Venture Electronics, which I will be talking about also in the near future when it comes to balance, because I will be doing a video on balance versus unbalanced, things like that, and I hope to kind of branch out into an educational series. Anyway, I'm getting off the main point. So, are any of these specifically better than the other? No, it depends on what you're trying to do. HD580 is extremely good for just sitting back and listening and relaxing. They have not necessarily the same punch of HD650 and not quite the soundstage of HD650, but they definitely have more life to them than 600. And a lot of people will find this as a great healthy mix. The downside is that you cannot find these things very easy. I mean, you'll occasionally see a pair on eBay, but good luck. Another downside is that these are kind of old. So if something breaks on these, you're going to have a harder time finding replacement parts. Now, a lot of people will replace these cups with HD600 cups, a lot of these bands with HD600 bands, things like that. But just make sure not to blow up your drivers. I sure hope you're not listening to Sennheisers that loud anyway. HD600, like I said, has incredible vocal performance. It's extremely intimate, and I think that on a tube amp, none of these can really compare. That's a personal opinion, though. You know, you may think completely differently from that, but I think that on a nice warm tube amp, HD600 is just absolutely phenomenal. And if you're looking to just do really long listening sessions and just need something that's not fatiguing at all and you're using a solid state amp, HD650 is absolutely the way to go, or HD6XX, since they are basically the exact same headphone. And with that being said, I of course definitely still use HD650 as my reference headphone. Now, recently I have thought about switching to HD600. I know that is probably a choice that a lot of people wouldn't find preferable for long-term listening, especially since HD600 has more highs in it. It's definitely a more fatiguing sound compared to HD650. Not as much compared to many other headphones. HD600 is definitely less fatiguing than most planars, but I think that it might be a good neutral middle ground for a lot more of my future comparisons, because a lot of people can imagine the difference between, you know, regular headphone and HD600 versus comparing something to HD650, since HD650 is a little bit less commonly owned. But we'll see where that goes. As it is right now, these are and have been my leading cans for quite some time. Now, M1060 did definitely come close, and in some areas M1060 does outperform these, but I still want to keep testing everything more just to be 100% sure before I give that my 100% stamp of, yeah, this is it. Also, build quality. I didn't mention this much. Honestly, build quality doesn't differ really across these headphones. They're pretty much all exactly the same on build, and in fact, a lot of the parts from them are all interchangeable. So the only real difference I've noticed is that the HD580 has a plastic grill. That really seems to be it. They all use the same headphone connectors, pretty much the same bands. The padding on the inside of these, the 580 uses the same as the 600, the 650 uses the same as the 6XX, and the actual ear cup pads and foam in there is the same across all of them. So really, build-wise, these don't differ much, and my 650s have been abused. My 650s have been abused a lot, and they are definitely durable. I mean, I'll show some shots of this up close, but actually, the paint has been wearing off on them, because I would just take these and set them on my desk so many times. I never had stands like this before, and for years, I just set these on my desk, and they've held up absolutely great. That has been my quick comparison of the Sennheiser HD580, HD600, HD650, and HD6XX from Mass Drop. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. If there's anything I missed, which I probably did, please let me know in the comments below. And make sure to like this video, subscribe, check out the Patreon. I put a link in the video description. I really appreciate the people who have helped support the channel on there. We've been growing really fast, and it's been extremely, extremely cool. In fact, all of these headphones were sent to me except for my HD650. The HD580, the HD600, the HD6XX, all of that were sent to me by people, and I really do appreciate that. So keep being awesome, guys. And until next time, this has been DMS3 TV. Peace.